For many people of my generation sitting here, the only name associated with Akbar was Birbal until Ashutosh Gowarikkar's magnum opus. We imagined Akbar to be a king with a penchant for riddles. We imagined Akbar to be a king with a penchant for riddles to throw at his witty commander. After Gowarikkar's production, we saw him a handsome, almost Greek goddess ruler capable of censor board approved romance in the royal gardens. The public discourse on Akbar had been limited to these till our next author attempted to look at Akbar through the kind gaze of a non-historian historian. Yes, that's what she calls herself. Parvati Sharma describes herself as a non-historian, but she has expertly penned multiple books on the mysterious and ever-fascinating Mughal era of Indian history. She has a degree in English literature from St. Stephen's College and a master's in history from Jawaharlal Nehru University. She debuted with The Dead Camel and Other Stories of Love in 2010, which gained her prominence for its depiction of love and sexuality in urban India. Fascinated by the Mughal period of Indian history, she first wrote a book for children called The Story of Babur in 2015. It was acclaimed as delightful and deeply engaging. Her next book, Close to Home, was a novella. Turning back to the Mughals, Parvati gave her readers Jahangir, an intimate portrait of a great Mughal, which is a historical biography. Akbar of Hindustan is a book we are eager to discover through her new, sharp and understanding of the iconic Mughal. She is now one of the expert voices on the subject and regularly writes a column for the Hindu business line and books and history. Her portrait of Akbar the Great, brings alive as never before a man imperfect and extraordinary, who ruled for nearly 50 years and has lived in the Indian imagination for close to half a millennium. It is poetic to have VLF's founding secretary and a major history geek, Sachin Jahagirdar, bring to forth the nuances of today's book and the author. Sachin Jahagirdar runs the Tata Play franchise for the last 15 years. He's a treasurer of Nagpur First Foundation and chair for Global Nagpur Awards. He's also the co-founder for Book Adda, a community for book lovers in Nagpur. He's a past president of Vidarbha Management Association and has curated a workshop called Curiosity Quotient for history and SST teachers. He's an irregular blogger at WordPress and is in possession of a rare collection of mint coins and philatelic stamps. He wrote a column for children at Twinkle Star by the name In the Wonderland of Stamps. And currently he writes a monthly column for Insight, which is also a supplement of Hitwad, where he interviews authors of national and international repute. Welcome both our author and moderator. I request Sachin Jahagirdar to usher Madam Parvati Sharma to the dais to walk us down history.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a challenging session because it's a post-lunch session.
Yes.
It's a sleepy session. I know. You were just complaining. So, just about 3 years ago, for everybody in the audience, 3 years ago I was just like you attending one of Parvati's session in Delhi. That time she was talking about Jahangir. Then VLF was not even conceptualized. In just about 3 months after that session, it was conceptualized. She was here to talk about Jahangir in 2020. I was organizing secretary then. In 23, you are again here. So for the statistics, in the 48 authors that we have, only 2 people were part of the 2020 Lit Fest. One is Dr. Uday Kulkarni, and another is you, Parvati. So welcome for the second time.
Thank you very, very much, Sachin. It's a real pleasure. And I remember, and I'm not just saying this, that the 2020 visit here was one of my happiest Lit Fest memories. You were so warm, so welcoming, and your audiences were so engaged. And I really enjoyed myself, so I'm very much looking forward to today.
Absolutely. Looking forward for your session again. So first a disclaimer. I'm a student of history, and 2 historians are in the audience. I'm absolutely nervous, Dr. Uday Kulkarni and Vijay Gokhale. So I, in fact, just figured out if there's a possibility of changing the moderator for the session. So Parvati, this is your second non-fiction book. First was Jahangir and second is Akbar. So let me begin by asking that chronologically, Akbar comes before Jahangir. But your book, Jahangir comes before Akbar.
Yes. I think it's just as well. It was not a conscious decision at all. It was, I mean, even writing Jahangir was almost a chance thing that happened. You know, I was working on something completely different. I was working on a book of fiction, and that it was running into some problems. And my publisher, who had read, you know, the children's book on Babur, said, "Why don't you try something like that
Yes.
on Jahangir?" So I went back home and I looked up the Jahangir Nama and I started reading it and immediately enjoyed it, and so I wrote that, and then Akbar happened thereafter, again via some persuasion from my publishers. But I'm glad that it happened in that order, because really thinking about it, if I had gone into Akbar blind, as it were, I don't think I would have been able to come to grips with him and his time at all. Because as I say, I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm not a historian, so I've not been steeped in this world for, you know, I've just come to it fairly new. And so Jahangir was like an introduction to Akbar for me in that sense.
Correct. Coming to the title of this book, and I'm sure you have been asked this question umpteen times, and there are two questions in it. So first of all, the title says Akbar of Hindustan. So my question is it metaphorical in nature, or do you really mean it, or there is a sarcasm in it? What is it, number one? And secondly, as we all aware that a lot of things have been written on Akbar in last 100 years, 150 years, whatever. So why Akbar, why now, and the title?
Well, the title is the shorter answer. So, no, title is not, I wouldn't say it's metaphorical or sarcastic. It is, perhaps it's literal in two different ways, you know. So, partly it suggested itself, because one of the pitfalls that you really don't imagine when you come to write non-fiction from fiction, is that you find multiple characters with the same names, you know. So there are at least three sort of Muzaffars in this life and times of Akbar. There are some various Masoms, and often in the texts of the time they are distinguished by their geographical location. So there is Muzaffar Gujarati, or there is Masom Kabuli, because he comes from Kabul,
right,
or from Gujarat. So in that sense, he is Akbar Hindustani. You know, in fact, the first title that suggested itself to me was Raja Hindustani, but then I was told that was too flippant. So therefore, Akbar of Hindustan.
Oh, nice.
But also at another level, again at fairly literal level, it was meant to suggest that, you know, this is a man who comes from outside. He comes from Kabul. He is Central Asian in his heritage, but he becomes Hindustani over the course of his life. He becomes truly of Hindustan.
That's right.
So that is the answer to the question of the title. About why Akbar, why now? Again, there are sort of two. One is, you know, I finished Jahangir, and I enjoyed Jahangir very much.
Me too.
Thank you. He was great fun to get to know, and he was a very sympathetic character. His Jahangir Nama is one of the most entertaining books, and I recommend it to everybody. And so I was very keen to do more. I felt like I hadn't had enough. You know, I was still hungry after my meal. So I went to my publisher, and we were thinking about what to do next. And my publisher, Chiki, and my editor on this book, Nandini, both very keen on Akbar. And I was quite reluctant, because, you know, it seemed like too much. Like, I just wanted a little morsel more, not like a banquet to follow Jahangir's meal. So, and Chiki said something that made a lot of sense to me. She said, if you are going to be writing about the Mughals, you have to come to terms with Akbar. And you can't really talk about the Mughals without talking about him.
Absolutely not.
So I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I started, but I was, at first I wasn't sure if I'd be able to do it. And then when I actually started reading about him for the first, in my initial reaction, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, because I started this book in 2019. And Akbar, unlike Jahangir, is not an immediately sympathetic, immediately likable person.
That's right.
He is not only is he a very complicated man, he is also a very ruthless man. He literally builds the empire, and you cannot build an empire without breaking eggs.
Being ruthless also.
Yeah, and while I was reading about this, all around me, there was quite a bit of empire building going on also, whether it was, making America great again, under Donald Trump, or, closer to home, this talk about the Hindu Rashtra, or this creation of, more and more authoritarian leaders across the world sort of holding sway. And then to find something similar in Akbar was, for me, it was too, it was too resonant, and so I wasn't sure if I was actually even liking him. But then, as I continued reading, I got to know more and more of him and read more and more perspectives. You see that there is something very different happening there, and this is a man who is accumulating power at breakneck pace, and yet there's a little twist in his tale, because as he accumulates power, his instinct is not towards just only exercising it for his own benefit or the benefit of his associates, but rather he's constantly asking himself the question, what is the just way to exercise power?
Really?
And yes, and that seemed to me very resonant and very somehow oddly sort of relevant to our times.
So you mentioned that you said the pace. So मैं आपको बताऊंगा सबको कि हम लोग जब हाईवेज पे ड्राइव करते हैं ना, तो एक ऐसा समय आता है कि आपको सामने तक हमको रास्ता बहुत खुला नज़र आता है, एंड वी कैन स्पीड अप, बट देन सडनली वी फील दैट विल मेंटेन काइंड ऑफ एक पर्टिकुलर स्पीड पे हम कार को मेंटेन करते हैं या हम क्रूज कंट्रोल का इस्तेमाल करते हैं. तो जब मैं ये किताब पढ़ रहा था, सो आई रियलाइज दैट क्रूज कंट्रोल फीलिंग एट various occasions, it's been written so beautifully on those occasions. Especially you took a lot of time describing how Humayun dies, how Akbar is born, how Adam Khan is executed. I mean, I insist all of you, if you can pick up a copy and if you can read these 3 episodes of Akbar's life. So for a reader, it's absolute pleasure. I mean, the way you play with the speed of your narration, and especially these 3 episodes, and then finally when Akbar is dying. So when you were writing these 4 major episodes of his life, so was it a conscious decision to kind of play with the speed of the book, or it just happened, or are they really important in Akbar's life as well as for a writer?
I guess it would be a little combination of all those things. But first of all, thank you, Sachin. It's very nice for a writer to hear such things. But it would be a combination. I think certain, like for example, Humayun, all of Humayun felt, was of great, like I found myself very interested in him. Not only because his actual character is not, we have these, the Mughals we know through stereotypes. So we know Humayun as a sort of sentimental, stargazing, unambitious man who basically lost an empire, was constantly quarreling with his brothers. But, when you see the details of his life, he's a hard-nosed man who, knows what he wants and goes after it.
Who spends 15 years in exile.
He spends 15 years, out of Hindustan, of those
After Suri's battle.
Yes, exactly. But claws his way back. Doesn't let go of that ambition. So he's not the sort of weak person that we know. But also in terms of his relevance to Akbar's life, because it gives you. Like for me, when writing it, it felt, or even reading it, spending some time in the world that Akbar comes from helps us understand, the world that he then creates and begins to rule over. Because it is a very small stage You know, the Humayun and Kamran and quarreling over Kabul, city going from one to the other, like a ball, like a sort of ball, are fighting for very hard for small stakes. And then you have, you know, the intense rise, the insane
Absolutely.
rise that Akbar goes through is, you can only see that in contrast. And then some of those scenes, yes, Adam Khan is, you know, in all tellings of Akbar's life, that is a very central episode, because it's usually seen as the first time that Akbar pretty much takes control. You know, this is the execution of Adam Khan, who comes into his fort one day and kills his foster father, Shamsuddin Muhammad Atka, who is also his...
Aga Khan, yes.
Yes. And then Akbar is, at that particular point, Akbar is sleeping. He's not interested, you know, Shamsuddin has been holding a meeting, a council meeting. Akbar is not interested in holding council meetings. He's about 18 years old. And he's upstairs having an afternoon nap. And actually those pictures are not...
Do you have that? Oh, yeah. Can you please run that parallelly?
If you run it, if you go a little bit aage, I can show you the actual execution. There he is. So there he is on
This
top,
one.
and he's wearing a lungi, and he's woken up, and then you know, Adam Khan goes up, and
Yes,
he's got
this
a sword
is,
in hand.
This is very well shown in movie also. Yeah.
Yes. And because it's very dramatic. And then, you know, Adam Khan, it's not clear what he's going to do. Is he going to sort of explain what he did, or is he going to stab Akbar, or is he really, I mean, actually going to kill the king? And nobody knows. But Akbar doesn't wait to find out. He punches him, you know, and he falls to the floor. And then he's furious, and he has him picked up and thrown down. If you see the next slide, it's a sort of more close-up of the gory details. But he has him thrown down to the ground. That doesn't kill Adam Khan. He has him dragged back by the hair and thrown down again head first. And this is the end of Adam Khan. And it is, you know, in terms of, and Adam Khan is not just another, you know, nobleman or soldier in his court. He's also the son of Mahamanka, who is Akbar's foster mother, to whom he's very, very attached. She's very close to him.
That's right.
And
that is why it is more important.
Exactly. And then 40 days after this, she dies of grief. So in a sense, he's not only killed her son, he pretty much, you know, she dies of grief for him. But this is the price at this point. Obviously, there's a price he has to pay for power. And this is it. And after this, he sort of grabs onto the reins of power and starts attending council meetings himself.
So there's another very interesting term in this book that you have taken. It's a Persian phrase. The phrase goes like, ya takht, ya takhta. So I think, can you explain? So, but my question is, over the years, I mean, after the death of Babur also, like Humayun and his brother Kamran and Hindal, they also fought. For the battle of succession, I'm drawing your attention to. So, is it this way that all the Mughal emperors later kind of patronized the battle for succession, encouraged rather, or for example, Shahzadaon ke beech mein elephants ki fight hona was common, and then this example of this Persian phrase you mentioned, ya takht ya takhta. So, was it kind of officially the emperors wanted between their Shahzade or the princes to happen? What is your take on the battle of successions that we saw? We saw, of course, between Dara Shikoh and Aurangzeb later.
Yes. So this is not my take. This is a take from. So ya takhta means either the throne or the grave, or the funeral. And the phrase is from Munis Farooqi, who's a historian who's written a very, very interesting book called Princes of the Mughal Empire, in which he basically charts the change in how succession happens. And traditionally, traditionally, as is the tradition of Genghis Khan and thereafter, the Chingizid tradition is to divide an empire amongst the various contending princes. So in that sense, when Babur dies, Humayun gets Hindustan, Kamran gets Kabul, which explains why there's so much tension when Humayun lands up in Kabul and says, I want it, because Kamran says, no, you've lost your inheritance. Now don't try and take mine. And so Kamran is very justified, though he's actually painted as a villain in all Mughal text, but he has a point. So that's how, and then even when Akbar comes, I mean, he happens to be in Hindustan when Humayun dies, and then through a series of chance, determination, luck, he remains here, and then his empire grows and grows and grows. Kabul is controlled first by Humayun's youngest wife, who is basically regent for Humayun's second son, about whom nobody ever know. I mean, I didn't know about him until I started writing Jahangir. There's a man called Mirza Hakim. He's here in one of these slides, if you go further. He's wearing a sort of orange top. So anyway, so this, you know, so that is generally the protocol. Akbar, it seems, starts reversing that. And one of the first signs of that is that he assigns his sons mansabdari ranks, you know, along with all the other
also the governorships.
Also the governorships, but you know, so they are ranked in the empire, and towards the end of his life, I mean, he has created this huge empire and doesn't seem to have any desire to actually now divide it between his sons. He wants, first of all, he would like to remain alive for as long as possible. He really does seem to believe that he's going to live for a century or more. But if he does have to die, then he wants the empire, it seems, wants it to remain solid, and he's not at all particularly sure about which of his sons, if it goes to, you know, which one he would like it to go to. Any of them. In fact, it seems he prefers his grandson. But so Munis Farooqi's argument is that what happens as a result of this change is that instead of having different areas that come to them as inheritance, the princes begin to cultivate supporters. So they get new kinds of noblemen in their ranks. So for example, Salim, who becomes Jahangir later, is a friend and patron of Bir Singh Bundela, who assassinates...
who executes Abul Fazl later.
And so when Jahangir becomes emperor, Bir Singh Bundela rises along with him. And so this is Farooqi's argument, is that, you know, that as a result you have, with every generation you have new blood coming into, or new talent coming into the to the throne and surrounding the throne. And this, in a sense, this process, which though it can be bloody, also has the advantages of creating, of generating a new talent pool, is undermined during Aurangzeb's reign, because Aurangzeb knows exactly how you know, princes can plot against their fathers, having done it himself. So then he keeps a very, very close eye on his sons, and doesn't allow them to you know, go through this process, to have their own followers, to have their own courts, which actually then weakens the court generally, or the, you know, the center.
Right. So Parvati, now you're aware that the theme for this year's festival is inclusion. So now I would like to have your views. Like for example, Akbar ensured the translation of Mahabharata and Ramayana in Persian language. Also, he released coins on Ram and Sita. So my question is, do you believe he was inclusive in that sense? Also, there's this mention I read somewhere, not in this book I think, but it's called Diwali was also celebrated in front of Agra Fort. And what was that term? Jashne Chiragan. They used to call Diwali Jashne Chiragan. Right. So, can we call him inclusive, or it was only for the optics?
No, I think we can certainly call him inclusive. In fact, if you go ahead, I have some slides of the Ramayana that he commissioned. Uh, I'll just show that before I answer. No, that's Mirza Hakim, his brother. This is a painting from the Hari Vansh. This is Krishna, of course, with the mountain. Then next one, and this is Hanuman coming to Sita in Lanka, and this is a scene from the Persian Ramayana that he had commissioned. He had made for his mother.
The Persian version had the images like these.
Yes, yeah, they were beautifully illustrated. Illustration. He loved art. And the next one is the coin that you were talking about, the Ram Siya coin. So yeah, no. So to answer your question, I would say yes, very much so. He comes to it through a process. This idea of inclusion, because, and just to put it simply and as briefly as I can, Akbar is a king, right? And across cultures, across time, and certainly at that time in the 16th century, a king is God's representative on earth. He is meant to do God's will, right? And Akbar, as I said earlier, comes from a fairly small pond. I mean, he comes from Kabul. He's Sunni Muslim, surrounded mostly by Central Asians. By the time he's in his late 20s, early 30s, his empire extends from Gujarat to Bengal. And not just his empire, his court, even his family, because Salim has just been born to his Rajput wife, contains a multiplicity of ethnicities and faiths, right? So if he is to do God's will, which God's will is he to do? And this is a serious question. If he chooses the wrong God, then he will be doing the devil's work, right? Correct. And so then begin these Ibadat Khana debates, and in which clearly it seems the intention is to discover which is the true faith, which is the correct faith. And this is not, this I'm not taking only from Abul Fazl, who writes a fairly flattering portrait of Akbar, but also from his critics like Badauni and Father Montserrat, who's a Jesuit priest who participates in many of these debates, and who says that Akbar was constantly wanting to know which nation on earth worships the true God. Right? And all these people, and these are really, really heated debates. If you read some of the description, it's not just sort of sitting quietly. They can come to blows, and people get seriously angry. And at some point in this, during the course of the months and years in which these debates are held, Akbar could have settled on one. He could have, it need not by this time, because many people believe that Akbar has decided that he himself is God, forget about anybody else. So he could have said, I am it, and we see that again, even in the modern world. You see countless examples of, leaders who believe that, either one person or the cult of one personality or one faith or one race should decide how a country or a nation is governed. And he could have done that, but he doesn't, because ultimately, what is it that God's will is supposed to take him, get him to do? It is supposed to get him to bring justice and therefore peace and therefore prosperity to his people. So, why not just make that the foundational tenet of his rule? The idea of Sulh-e-Kul, which becomes sort of a foundational tenet, is peace for all. And this, so he takes God out of the equation, basically, and he says that, the prosperity, peace, and justice for my people is how I will govern towards that end. And to the question of whether it is optics, I would say no, because this actually arouses criticism in people. I mean, there are, for various policies that he has, including these, does not necessarily go down well. And this Father Montserrat, the Jesuit priest that I mentioned, puts it, I think, very well, and in terms that are very resonant even today, because he says, I'm paraphrasing, he says that by allowing that all religions are equal or equally valid, what Akbar is doing is saying that none of them is true. Right? Because if only one can be true, And, and this is Father Montserrat, who is actually benefiting from Akbar's policies. You know, he's being allowed to speak very freely in court, allowed to proselytize, allowed to build churches and chapels, and yet he doesn't like it. So there is a, he's not, you know, he is going against the tide of a certain kind of opinion.
That's right. Well said, Parvati. So we talked about building of an empire. We talked about inclusion. Now I would like to draw everybody's attention. While any emperor builds his empire, another integral part of building empire is resistance. So there was some formidable resistance that Akbar also faced. And there is this very interesting, for those who do not study as much history as one should. So I'll just explain for the audience that, you know, at the first battle of Panipat, it was between Akbar's grandfather and I think Maharana Pratap's Rana Sanga. So Rana Sanga and Babur. So there is this argument whether they were together or, but one thing is clear that they were against the Lodhis. Whether they were together or not, I'm not sure. But they were definitely against the Lodhis. And here, at this point, they are fighting each other. There is a formidable resistance put up by Rana Pratap. 2 generations down, you mentioned this to me over an informal chat, that 2 generations down, they became friends again. And another resistance that I want to bring to the notice is Chand Bibi in Maharashtra, Ahmednagar. Chand Bibi also put up a very formidable resistance to the empire of Akbar. So just both the things, can you clarify?
No, there are many brave attempts to resist what is becoming a kind of Mughal, Akbar's juggernaut. You know, it's just sort of rolling across north, south, east, west, taking everything in its path. And there are many people who resisted. Chand Bibi is one of them. Towards the end, there are descriptions of her, in fact, coming out with her veil, encouraging the soldiers in the fort of Ahmednagar, and eventually she's betrayed by her own. I mean, she manages to create an alliance of the Deccan kingdoms, but is betrayed by her own nobility, who and murdered by them. Rana Pratap wages a formidable, lifelong resistance against Akbar, and you know, there's this Colonel James Todd, who is a colonial administrator and a great fan of the Rajputs. You read him, you can see that he wishes he were Rajput himself. And he describes it in very romantic terms, you know, this, because basically Rana Pratap is living the life of a vagabond for his entire life, running, you know, being sort of fighting and then being chased from here to there to here. And there's a, but the real sort of story there seems to be the sort of rivalry or the enmity with Man Singh, who is actually Akbar's general who fights Rana Pratap at Haldigati. And there's this fantastic story that Todd relates about how Man Singh is sent to Rana Pratap to try and negotiate. You know, this is after the fall of Chittorgarh, and Man Singh goes, and Rana Pratap refuses to eat with him, because not only is he a representative of the enemy, he is also married into the enemy, you know, into the enemy's house. So he won't eat with him. Man Singh is very angry, and his pride is hurt, so he refuses to eat himself. He gets on his horse and starts to get. As he's leaving, one of the Rana's men calls out after him, you know, when you come next time, bring your phuppa with you. And that is, of course, Akbar. And there are many other stories of, you know, of resistance. There's, amongst the most tragic is the Yusuf Shah Chak of Kashmir, to whom, in fact, it's Man Singh's father, Bhagwan Das, who goes to battle there. And, you know, I mean, this is Bhagwan Das and his men marching to Kashmir, feeling the cold. They're not used to that kind of weather. So they are not very keen to advance. But the Kashmiris themselves are also quite surprised that they've made it this far. So the Kashmiris are also keen to negotiate. So Yusuf Khan Shah says that I will, you know, if you leave, I will give you certain sort of, the king, emperor will get certain kind of tribute. And Bhagwan Das says, why don't you come with me and pay obeisance to him personally, and I guarantee your safety. When they arrive, Akbar is in Punjab at the time, in Lahore. For some reason, Akbar is not happy with this deal that Bhagwan Das has struck, and he in fact has Yusuf Shah arrested and eventually sent off to Bihar. And Bhagwan Das is so upset by this, and as Badauni puts it, his honor is wounded, that he tries to stab himself, to kill himself. In which thankfully he doesn't succeed. There's a Muzaffar Gujarati who wages this lifelong sort of battle against Akbar, and when eventually, and that again not against Akbar personally, this is Abdur Rahim who is leading the campaign in Gujarat. And
Abdur Rahim Khane Khana.
Abdur Rahim Khane Khana, yes. And eventually he is captured, this young Muzaffar. Exactly for this eventuality, he's been carrying a sort of blade in his pocket all these years. And he says he wants to relieve himself, so he goes to the side and then he slits his own throat rather than be made a prisoner. So there are many instances of, of resistance. And eventually, as you say, Rana Pratap's descendants do align with the...
So tell us that, who became friends later?
So it is then Shah Jahan who goes and manages to get Rana Pratap's son, who is Amar Singh, to submit. But even Rana Amar Singh will not come to court. He draws the line at that. He sends his son, who is Kumar Karan, the prince. And Karan comes and he is, and this shows you how, what kind of importance actually, the court puts on Mewar, because Jahangir, who throughout his life, his father was practically begging him to go and wage a campaign, they never actually did. But when his own son Shah Jahan does it, he wines and dines Karan and spends a lot of time trying to, make friends with him. As it happens, the friendship seems to have been with Shah Jahan. So when Shah Jahan rebels against Jahangir, it is Karan's younger brother called Bhim, Kumar Bhim, who joins his rebellion and in fact dies fighting on Shah Jahan's side against the imperial troops.
Interesting. So ultimately they became friends later.
Ultimately, yes, allies.
Okay. So I think we are running short of time, but we have 10 minutes to go. Right. So there's an interesting chapter. She's called Akbar as the loneliest mortal. Because he outlived almost everybody around him. If I'm not wrong, all the 9 jewels were dead by this time, or anybody was remaining then. But he lost his mother before he dies, 1 year before he dies.
He lost his mother 1 year before he died.
He lost Abul Fazl, he lost his sons also.
He lost his sons, he lost Bhagwan Das, he lost Todar Mal, he lost Birbal, which was a tremendous blow to him because he was really, it seems, deeply attached.
So very interesting chapter. I mean, ज़्यादा लंबी उम्र होना भी शायद अच्छी बात नहीं है. Ultimately, emperor becomes the loneliest mortal. And another sarcasm I thought that you used very nicely, that please explain to us also. Parvati writes that Akbar molded Hindustan but could not mold his sons.
He could.
Maybe some lessons on parenting.
Akbar could have done with lessons on parenting, because it seems he was extremely fond, and he seems to have been a very indulgent father to his daughters. In fact, Abul Fazl makes a point of remarking that he would celebrate. It was not done to celebrate the birth of a girl at the time in Hindustan, or certainly perhaps not amongst the Rajputs, but Akbar would celebrate, and he was very, very close to his daughters. One of them is supposed to be extremely spoilt and bad-tempered, but even then, there's a record, Jahangir writes about it in the Jahangir Nama, in which he says that, when I'm gone, please take care of her, because she's my ladli, he says.
Yes.
But towards his sons, even though they were born of such tremendous prayer, he was not having, he had twins who died in infancy, and then there was, he just wasn't somehow having a son. And then famously he prays and has people pray for him, and then Salim Chishti and the boon and the three sons that are born, and the great celebration, when Salim is born, and equally with Murad and with Daniel. And yet somehow he seems to have been, he was a strict father. And this Father Montserrat describes it. He says, and you get a sense of him because the Jesuits arrive in Akbar's court, and Akbar appoints this Montserrat as a tutor to Murad specifically, and that's the middle son. Montserrat said that Murad was initially very, very shy and very, very timid. And he realized that this was because Akbar himself would be very rough with them. He would scold them. He would even, hit them if he was angry. And he had also given their tutors the right to do this. So the tutors were allowed to. So Murad, poor fellow, was really scared of the father. And when he realized that Father Montserrat was not going to hit him, then he became far more friendly and far more relaxed. And then growing up too, it seems, that he has a great deal of expectation from the sons, that they are not, I think, almost, the decks are stacked against them, because they cannot somehow, even though Akbar is a man who's very good at delegating to other people, somehow with his sons it doesn't, it doesn't translate. And they take to drink, all three of them drink excessively.
Absolutely.
Daniel certainly dies of
excessive drinking itself, Daniel. Right. So I think we'll open this house, open the session for house for interaction. But before that, I would like to, sir, we'll come to you. But before that, I would like you to read one paragraph from your book. We have kind of chosen after a lot of discussion. She's going to read small para, and then we'll open this for the house.
This is about Akbar's eating habits. Akbar's lofty mind and disposition was such, of course, that Abul Fazl would like us to know that the question, what dinner has been prepared today, never passes over his tongue. From the historian, that is Abul Fazl's own detailed, sometimes mouth-watering account of the imperial kitchen and its recipes, it is clear that Abul Fazl himself wasn't immune to the pleasures of a good meal. Akbar ate only once a day, at no fixed time. He began his meal with milk or curd and ended with a prayer. And he became increasingly fond of vegetarian fare over the ages. From my earliest years, said the emperor in one of his sayings, whenever I ordered animal food to be cooked for me, I found it rather tasteless and cared little for it. However, for all that Akbar was not interested in food and had ascetic taste, the one meal that did come to him every day was anything but frugal. 100-odd dishes would arrive in a grand procession of gold and silver and copper dishes, prepared by chefs from all countries, cooked with water from the Yamuna and Chenab rivers, mixed with rainwater and a few drops from the Ganga. Abul Fazl classifies the cuisine into three broad types. Sufiana, which was devoid of meat, which might include something like zard biranj, rice cooked with sugar, ghee, almond, pistachios, raisins, ginger, saffron, and cinnamon. Or khichdi, which was rice, moong dal cooked in ghee. Halwa or green saag, which Abul Fazl describes as one of the most pleasant dishes. If it wasn't one of Akbar's vegetarian days, the rice might also be cooked with meat to make kabuli, pulao, halim, or an extravagant dish called bugra, made of meat, flour, ghee, gram, sugar, vinegar, onion, carrots, beets, turnips, spinach, fennel, saffron, ginger, cloves, cardamom, cumin, cinnamon, and round pepper. Finally, there was meat cooked on its own, with spices, from kebabs to a whole sheep or a deboned fowl stuffed with minced meat, eggs, ghee, onions, coriander, ginger, saffron, and pepper to make a delicious musamma. Then, of course, there was the endless variety of pickles and chutneys, of mango, lemon, turnip or carrot, apple, peach or raisins, cucumber, bamboo, brinjal or mustard, along with curd and green salads, ginger, limes and bread, on which last Abul Fazl speaks for the subcontinent when he says that a chapati tastes very well when served hot.
Now would be a good time Q&A, but now would also be a good time to remind everybody that there are food stalls in the lawn.
हेलो मैडम, नमस्ते।
Hello, sir.
जैसे हम सब जानते हैं कि अकबर ने दीन इलाही धर्म चलाया और हिंदुओं के जो भी धर्म हैं उनको मनाते थे, जोधाबाई से शादी भी किया। तो क्या इन सब के पीछे उनका कोई राजनीतिक एजेंडा था क्या?
राजनीतिक
हाँ,
इंटरेस्टिंग।
इसके पीछे कोई राजनीतिक एजेंडा था क्या? नंबर एक। और नंबर दूसरी बात ये है,
सर एक ही सवाल प्लीज।
हाँ, राजनीतिक एजेंडा था कि नहीं?
माफ़ करिएगा सर, मैं अंग्रेजी में जवाब दूंगी प्लीज़, इफ़ यू डोंट माइंड। हिंदी में I'll get lost. Akbar is a very skilled politician for sure. He is, it is not that he is not aware of the sort of demands of power or the need to assert power and how to do it, how to manage alliances, how to, get people on his side. He is also a very charismatic personality, so he does manage to, gather people to him. But like I think, as I was saying to Sachin, there is of course there's the logic of, if you are going to govern a diverse society, then you have to accept its diversity, otherwise you will have chaos. That is the logic that was prevailed then and it prevails now. However, in doing that, in doing it as recklessly as Akbar does it, and in ways that are also, not necessarily always saintly. He accepts all faiths, but he also really genuinely seems to think he is divinely blessed, at the very least, if not, semi-divine himself. To do all these things also attracts a lot of resistance. I mean, there are many rebellions against him. There are people in his court. Badauni, for example, is a bitter critic. And there are also there are accounts of assassination attempts, people who have spoken about wanting to kill him. Rebellions that go on. There's the Uzbek rebellion. There's a rebellion of Central Asian chiefs in Bengal. Many of them that are at least in part triggered by some of these policies. So I hope that answers partly the question.
We'll have another next question, please.
Thank you, Parvati ji. This is Jitu Jodhpurkar back here.
Hi.
I've been out of India for over 30 years and I found this very fascinating. My quick question is, I've heard that there was an interesting relationship between Akbar and Mirabai. Santa Mirabai, mostly of reverence. I was curious what you found about that, if anything.
So they are not contemporaries at all. I mean, Mirabai is much earlier. So in that sense, no. There would be no actual relationship. He may well have heard of her, and he may have, because he was.
Good afternoon, Parvati. Akbar has been one of the most depicted characters in Bollywood. How is he at variance with the historical, your objective Akbar?
Well, he is depicted in many different ways, I suppose. There is Mughal-e-Azam. He is this sort of elder statesman who's, trying to maintain the status quo in the face of Salim's sort of wayward romance. Then in Jodha Akbar, of course, he is Hrithik Roshan, so there's nothing more to be said. So I don't know if there's any one way in which Akbar has been depicted, but if there was, and I would not even say that in popular culture generally Akbar is always depicted as a sort of heroic, wise, saintly, sort of or brave, purely good character, but sometimes that is the case. And if there was any popular perception of him that can stand challenging, it is that, because he is a complicated person, and I think that the sort of dark in him coexists with the light, and that's what makes him so interesting.
Greetings to you, ma'am. I'm indeed delighted to attend this session. My question to you is, what are the similarities between Aurangzeb and Akbar? And if you were to compare between Akbar and Aurangzeb, who do you think was firstly a more capable leader and secondly a better diplomat?
I haven't.
She hasn't written on Aurangzeb
I
yet.
haven't written on Aurangzeb, and so I shouldn't speak too much about him. But I would, at the risk of perhaps not answering this question exactly, I would say that this comparison of Akbar and Aurangzeb is something that runs through, from colonial history to modern times. There is always, Akbar the good and Aurangzeb the bad, right? And I think this does neither of them any favors. I don't think that Akbar was purely good, nor do I think that Aurangzeb was purely bad. They were both men who exercised a great deal of power for a great deal of their lives, and acted in ways that we can judge now, indifferently. But just the idea of a heroes and villains in history, I don't think helps us understand history very well. But thank you.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
ma'am.
Hi, Parvati. What we know about the entire Mughal Empire is like between Babur to Aurangzeb, probably Akbar is considered to be the most effective ruler that India has had. Is it something to do with his agenda of inclusivity, or was it because of his interest in art and culture which made him like a ruler which the general public could kind of identify with? So how is it like? Why is it that he is so effective in comparison to the rest of them?
I think it's just a combination of many factors in his case. It's not, it's certainly the inclusiveness is one of them. The art and culture stroke the sort of engagement with people is, as the time goes by, Akbar really does begin to acquire a kind of mythical status for his subjects. People come to him, and again, this is not only from Abul Fazl, but also from critical accounts like Badani's and Montserrat's. People think of him as a peer, as a saint. They come to him asking for prayers, like asking him to pray for rain, or they will drink the water that he's washed his feet in order to heal themselves. Women come to him asking for children. But this status is acquired not just by sitting there. I mean, there are many things he does. One is just the conquest, right? So he conquers a huge landmass across from north to west to almost to here, all the way up from Kabul to where we are sitting, and from Gujarat to Bengal, which creates this sort of unified territory that then allows for a kind of prosperity, allows for trade, allows for movement from one part, it allows for a certain kind of stability. He makes administrative changes, and this, when I was writing the book, I thought this is going to be really the most boring part, and I kept it till the second draft. First draft, I didn't even want to, because I didn't want to sit around looking at administration and land reforms and all of that. But it turns out it's actually very exciting, and it takes, again, a lot of resistance. A lot of these rebellions against him are because of this. But what he does, what basically the Mansabdari does, is it transforms feudal warlords were semi-independent feudal warlords, like somebody, let's say, will be in charge of, Jaunpur, or somebody will be sitting in, wherever, in Surat, and makes them salaried bureaucrats answerable to the state. Even the Deen-e-Ilahi, in a sense, is not really a mass religion. It's more a kind of oath of loyalty, like one might swear to the constitution today that is being sworn to the emperor. So basically creates these structures, the land reform, to encourage agriculture through various different kinds, through boring things like measuring land and categorizing different types of soil for how fertile it is and how much it should be taxed. These kind of things outlast him. So basically better and certainly very centralized governance. And so when he dies, and because this happens when kings die, there's chaos. So when he dies, and there's this young Jain poet and trader called Banarsi Das, who's written a lovely I'll finish in 1 second, autobiography. And he says when he dies, he's in Jaunpur, I think, and the whole city is in chaos. He himself slips and falls down the stairs, injures his head, because everyone's in a panic, thinking, where people are hiding their jewels, putting on, rough clothes over their nice, whatever they're wearing, and nothing happens. It's peaceful, it's quiet. The successor is announced. Jahangir will be the next emperor. There is no rioting, there's no chaos, there's no breakdown. That is the structure that he's gone and created.
I think we have run out of time, and thank you, Parvati. Thank you, everyone.
So much.
By the way, Parvati is available for a fireside chat kind of an arrangement downstairs at the lawns. I'll take her there. We can have all the questions. I could see a lot of hands being raised, but please excuse us. Sai, over to you.
We'd like to present you with a gift that has been made especially for you. It's been made by an artist, a very young artist called Arushi Mahurkar. She was briefed on your book and she's made this based on your book. I request Sachin sir to please present the gift.